True. That's like Robert Goldman. That one's reserved for Robert. When he's on, that's the intro until we find a better one.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that.
And a cleaner one. That one's all clean. Like
No, it
no
is clean.
words.
It is clean.
We worked hard to make that clean. Um, Perfect intro for this topic. We were gonna go budgets, and I guess we can like whenever it's you and Chris on, it's hard to not talk budgets. But there's so much more that you guys are capable of speaking intelligently
So,
about.
got to interrupt, Dan. I apologize.
Already, Chris. Already, he's early. He's got
So,
15 minutes.
so
Go ahead.
I got to tell y'all that are watching, if you weren't at the conference, you missed out. Robert put a show on.
Oh man,
Robert absolutely put a show on. The panel we did on budget and contract. Now, I was a little upset because I didn't get to say anything that I was supposed to say, and I had to force it in the last 30 seconds. But Robert saved the day, man. With his got to get a manicure and a pedicure the protocol. It was hilarious.
I texted you guys. That works. The pedicure, the manicure, that stuff.
You did, yeah.
It's good.
You're actually implementing it. I love it. It's amazing.
Robert came up on the fly with that. That was hilarious.
Yeah, it really was. It was a good time. I mean, that was it was pretty epic. I just wish we had more time for a Q&A from the audience because they were so engaged. They had so many questions, and unfortunately, I didn't make it to the breakout session, during lunch. So
But you know what? The audience is always on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter,
yeah,
Facebook. Right now, we're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, and then this will be recorded to YouTube and the audio. But thank you for that, Chris. But the point is, like, you guys are more than just budgets and contracts, and I think people that don't know you enough try to stick you guys in that corner, and I think you guys do much more than that. And quite honestly, like, we're in the middle of, at least at the sponsor and CRO side, like kind of a weird job market, for lack of a better word. I mean, sites, we don't see it. I'm no longer hiring though, because I think we have enough staff for the studies we have. But if we get another couple studies that I know we can enroll on, we probably would hire someone else too. But what are you seeing, Robert? Because you're coming in hot right now with articles and all kinds of stuff.
Dan, within the past, I would say 4 weeks, clinicaltrials.gov cold reach and cold calls are kind of ceasing, which is a sign. Obviously, that has a lot to do with the fact that I changed the status within our studies to, not enrolling, active. However, a lot of recruitment firms are reaching out. How can we help with your building of your teams? Can you look at this person's CV? Are you hiring contract perm roles? And I can tell you, no, we're not hiring. I've talked to a lot of biotech executives deep in the network. Neither are they. I think real quick, Chris, there was an article yesterday. They're saying, is 2024 the year of cost cutting and just, more so corporate America, and not just in pharmaceuticals, right? I'm talking across the entire board.
Yeah.
Just protecting the bottom line in a sense. And as a result, we still continue to see job cuts and reductions in forces, and people that are extremely experienced are having a very difficult time, finding a new gig or switching to a new gig if they choose to do so. So that's what I'm seeing on my end. It's a very different view, but go ahead, Chris.
So just to elaborate on your end, right? So you can speak definitively about your end, hopefully. In terms of hiring, right? You have recruiters calling you about jobs. Were you hiring 6 months ago, a year ago? Have you always been hiring up until recently? I mean, what did it look like in the past?
Great question. To be very honest with you, no, we haven't hired since we've been on a hiring freeze probably since 2022. I would say May of 2022 is when, there was no further discussions of expansion in terms of building out, a clinical team, which was smack dab in the middle of a
COVID.
pivotal trial. Well, not even so much COVID, but you're right. But a lot fell on the shoulders of the current team that I that I work with and oversee at the moment. But yeah, no, we have not been hiring.
So what's the reason behind that? So it's not COVID. I threw that out there, but
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with capital markets, fundraising, availability of funds, risk averseness as it pertains to investors, onboarding new investors. I just think a lot of the money was on the sidelines. I think it's changing. I am bullish on the fact that that this is possibly going to change. Oh, look at the puppy.
Little puppy.
Not such a puppy, boy.
We're
Chris.
we're on a patent cliff though for big pharma. 2027 is supposed to be the beginning of like the huge patent cliff. And for context, like Robert works for a really small biotech company, but the biotech sector in general has been hit hard. But the general consensus is that it has to get better because big pharma needs more M&A. They have this patent cliff coming up in 2027. Most of the big pharma start getting hit with patents expirations. So they need, not we, they need biotechs to start developing and start getting things through phase 2, phase 3. So I mean, you could argue that it's going to improve. Like maybe we're in the worst part of it for biotechs, right?
before you answer that, I just had one follow-up question that I wanted to throw out
Yeah,
there.
sure.
So when you lose somebody since 2022, you haven't been hiring. When you lose somebody, do you replace them or no?
We do. We
Okay,
have.
okay.
Unfortunately, we've only lost, a single team player who, we were able to be very fortunate and bring in a very talented individual to backfill that role. However, I mean, yeah, you have to operate with, there's the must-have stakeholders and then there's the nice-to-haves, right?
Sure.
But
Sure.
yeah, we did have to make one replacement.
The reason for my questions is it's not necessarily that it's just you don't have the need to hire because your team was organized and made and you haven't really lost any members. It sounds like, right?
Yeah, but Chris, it's a lean crew. I believe there's a need. It's just, there's a lot of contingencies like, operational budgets. Do you have the flexibility to bring on a full FTE? Is it a contractor that you may need? I mean, there's a lot, honestly, I think a lot of the audience would tell you, or, you would probably maybe even agree yourself that when you're in a pivotal trial, you need to have a pretty robust infrastructure to really oversee the quality of what your CRO partners are doing, assuming you're using a CRO. Some people use the FSP model. You're outsourcing certain tasks that may work for some organizations, but when you're solely relying on 100% outsourcing and you have to oversee each pillar of the clinical teams, and I'm talking the entire gamut, all the way from data management, PVG, safety,
Certainly.
medical monitoring, clinical monitoring, etc. It gets really challenging to work with a lean crew. So it's not like I didn't want to hire. I absolutely did. Just difficult in the climate that we're in right now when I don't have an operational budget to do so.
Certainly.
And Chris,
And it's in team again. It's more than just a salary, right? It's benefits. It's the whole gamut. It's to ensure the culture, is good. You want happy people. You want your team to be fired up coming in. You wanna make this change. That's why we're here. We're not here just to do this checklist job type of a deal. We want to actually get these products to market. So finding that happy medium is very challenging, at least for from what I see right now. And talking with a lot of the industry colleagues, a lot of
That was my next question.
I just talked to Joey Bose. Big shout out to Joey.
big shout out to Joe,
big shout out to Joey from Cytonics, president and CEO. They're doing big things in a familiar space to me. He echoes the sentiment. He's in fundraising mode 100% of the time. Very creative what he does. I mean,
very different.
Yeah, it's incredible actually.
Maybe that's the future. Do you think that's the future? What he's doing?
It could be, Dan. Finance in terms of fundraising is definitely not my area of expertise, but crowdfunding, you get 1,000 people to write $1,000 check.
I downloaded a white paper, but I haven't read it yet. That's another podcast by Icon about biotech funding. But I know Chris only has like 11 minutes left, so like I want him and you to get this dialogue going, and then when Chris drops off, we can pick it up. But if biotech pharma companies are cost cutting, which I mean, I guess the biotechs have been, doesn't mean they're going to continue, right? What types of trials or what therapeutic areas are they mostly focused on? What are you guys seeing?
So back in 2008, right? 2008, 2009, 2010, when sponsors were cutting things back, it seemed to me, and this is just anecdotal, of course, it seemed to me that they were sticking with the products that they had the most faith in, right? Everything that was, well, this may or may not work, kind of exploratory, no, we're done with that. Cut that by the wayside. When financial means return, we'll explore that further. But for now, it's just not, funding's not there. So just the things we have confidence that we can get FDA approval for are going to continue with. And in lucrative markets, they're more open to trying different things to see if there's anything there. That's my opinion. I don't know if that's true or not.
No, I agree with that completely. I mean, that's exactly, a business move that makes absolute sense. I mean, I would say this, how many first-in-class products have been approved since 2022? First in class, right? That's now the new standard of care, first line of treatment.
Has there been any? Maybe
there
one or
has.
two?
Exactly. That's my point.
Probably for rare disease stuff.
Rare disease. I'd say some, cell therapy, gene therapy, some autoimmune stuff, and maybe even some, behavioral health stuff for postpartum depression, for example. But in terms of anything else, you're starting to, I mean, how many plaque psoriasis drugs do we need? How many more JAK kinase inhibitors do we need?
Certainly.
How many more biologics do we need for, Crohn's, colitis,
GLP-1?
That's another thing, right? I mean, GLP-1s are blowing up the market, obviously, but now we're starting to see a lot of I don't want to get into the politics of that, but a lot of negative side effects of those that we haven't seen before, stomach paralysis being a big one.
Psychedelics are pretty big right now.
Chris, that is something that is so interesting to me. I think that market is absolutely insanely interesting,
And it seems to be expanding.
It does, from MDMA to DMT to psilocybin. Very interesting to see where these analogs go, to do this. And actually, I've even talked to a company, very interestingly enough. I'm not going to name their name because they're preclinical and, I just don't think it's appropriate. But they're developing non-addictive opioids. And so just a quick, lesson in opioids. You have the mu, kappa, and the nociceptor, right? Nociceptor pain receptor. The mu, kappa, and delta receptors, right, are typically there. And the kappa is typically the one responsible for the euphoria and addiction properties. So this company is developing compounds that have an affinity for the other receptors, which is able to achieve analgesic effect without the euphoria and addictive potential. It can be useful in alcohol use disorder. It can be useful in PTSD. Patients with PTSD, as a result, develop alcohol use disorder. So very interesting stuff in the pipeline. But again, they don't have the funding to push it forward. They're working with the DoD, NIH. They're getting grants in, but in terms of the private sector getting VC money, man, is it challenging for these types of companies.
And big pharma won't come in until you at least have a phase 2 positive results, right?
At least you got to have something to show, right? Data is what's going to draw in the crowds for sure, I believe.
Do you think because of the coming patent cliff, they're going to start investing earlier in some of these promising? I mean, they have no other choice. What other choice do they have? Just sit back and do nothing? I guess they can do that.
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
I sure
What
hope so.
what can people do? So let's go with the sites first, because you're saying sponsor CRO, maybe like a little bit of a hiring freeze. We're gonna get into what people can do, maybe like you guys' opinion, but the sites are unique. I think the sites, Chris, you deal with way more sites than me on a daily basis with our consulting service. Are our clients still hiring staff?
Certainly. I spoke with 2 site directors last week, both seeking CRCs. I turned them to Monica. So at the site level, certainly. I think even in hard times, the successful sites are still going to be hiring, even if we were in a recession / depression, just because there's a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's some some throughput in terms of coordinators, right? They move on. It's kind of like CRA, same thing. Um, Grass is always greener elsewhere, so they take a job elsewhere.
Turnover.
Yep. So there's always a need, I think, for coordinators. I don't think that dries up entirely necessarily. I think, of course, depending on the economics and the times, jobs can be hard to come by in every industry. The safety of medicine, and probably more broadly research, is I don't think it's ever completely dry, like completely. There will always be some need. I mean, unless we were in a Great Depression again, for workers.
Hmm.
That's my opinion.
Great job giving some comfort to the CRA Academy hopeful students, Chris. That was a good one.
I don't know
But
if that's sarcasm or.
no, it's both. It's both because people are listening. We get these questions asked all the time. Well, is now a good time to be a CRA? And the answer is yeah, it always is if that's what you want to do, but that's probably not going to be your first job. Your first job is probably going to be at a site level. And like Chris just said, sites, even in a recession, there's sites that hire. I don't think the same could be said of CROs and sponsors. Like if we remember the Great Recession of '08, there were sites that were still hiring. They were sponsored and CRO. That was absurd for them to hire. And because of Chris, what just Chris said with the turnover and people are always leaving, going somewhere else. I mean, at that time, it was like going into stock market or going into finance. There's always something going on at the site level, at the entry level, but there's always a time to get in. To be a CRA, I think you have to time it. I think the market kind of has to work in your favor. And I don't know, what do you guys think of the next 5 years as far as CRO job market? Do you think we stay in this kind of environment for 5 years, or do you
well,
think it gets better?
well, it's all dependent upon the economy. I think that's the driver. It's driver for everything.
Yep.
Seems like we are seeing a depression in the market, contrary to the vaccine boom. Coming from Icon, they're probably laying off quite a few. Was one of the first. Well,
Well, sorry to hear about that, Kellen. Hopefully, you
Yeah.
have no difficulties finding a job elsewhere.
yeah, sometimes there's no shame going back to the sites and riding out the storm. Do you think the CROs overhired? I feel like because of the vaccine stuff, they overhired just to prepare for the wave of work, and then they kind of had to let people go. Whereas sites never really overhired. I
That's a
think sites
possibility.
hire appropriately. I think if anything, sites underhire, from my
Yeah.
experiences.
I mean, I can give you my 2 cents on that one. I think personally, coming from the CROs, the large ones for over a decade, um, I think that during the vaccine boom, there was a lot of work that was awarded, right? Because everybody was focusing on vaccines, but there was a lot of trials like, we're awarding this to you, we're awarding that to you. You've won this, you've won that. A lot of bid defenses, a lot of RFPs going on. But then when it's time the timeline's like, oh yeah, we're going to kick off Q1 of 23 or Q1 of 24. What's happening is these trials are now being postponed, or these companies have gone bankrupt altogether. So that's really, I mean, I just read another article. 2023 was the year, was one of the largest amounts of small biotech pharma companies going bankrupt out of, in history. 100% of increase as compared to 2022. So I think the work that was awarded that CROs thought that they were going to conduct and start, a lot of those trials just never materialized, in my opinion. And the staff, because when I was at the CRO side, Dan, there was always this backlog of work. We always were under this mantra of there's too much work to be done, not enough bodies to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, I don't know if that's the case anymore. And I think a lot of companies are starting to insource where possible a lot of the duties that they would typically outsource to a CRO. So sometimes the FSP model might, take a back seat in terms of, the full outsourced
And let me
CRO.
tell you, I'm working on 2 studies with big sponsors, and they're using FSP models with their CROs.
Mhm.
Let me tell you the difference in quality of these CRAs compared to non-FSP. I mean, nothing against the non-FSP. You can tell who's the A team. I'm not going to get into it any further, Robert, but you know what I mean. Like,
Yep.
it's a clear distinction right now. And maybe the CROs, because of this long tail of the biotechs that are not investing in studies or delaying trials, are saying, you know what, we don't need more C team, B team. We do need more A team though, A and B team, and maybe that's what's happening too.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Kellen makes a great comment here, and this is what I've been saying for Dan. You've heard me I've been saying this for a year or,
Yeah,
or more. This is certainly the ambition of most companies because you have the control. Typically, when you are working with a CRO and you're not pleased with a certain resource, well, this is all we have. I can't tell you how many times I've seen in my career resources get allocated to a study. And again, this is not anything, I don't want any assumptions being made. This is not reflective of current, this is within my realm of clinical research career. I've seen this happen multiple times, dozens of times, where resources get allocated to a project where they haven't even onboarded yet. They still have to do their 2 weeks of SOP review. It's like, hey, we have this person starting, they're working through their SOPs, but they're available to start on their study this date.
yeah.
So,
And they haven't even been onboarded on the CRO's own policies.
exactly. Yet they're
Never mind the
allocated.
sponsors' policies.
Exactly. Exactly. So when you have that lack of control, quality control, at the end of the day, I know everybody says this, but data quality is mission critical to everything. Without the data, all the everything in between the cracks is irrelevant. It truly, truly is. And what I mean is sites conducting and producing good quality data, and whether it's a positive result or a negative result or a neutral result, I'm not saying it needs to go one way or the other, as long as it's Alcoa, right? That's a big problem. And I'm just seeing from programming issues to system issues, tech issues, database issues, just, site conduct issues, enrolling ineligible patients, important protocol deviations impacting safety and efficacy, thereby patients not being able to be included in per protocol population. They end up being in the intent to treat. And when you have a disparity between these two populations that's so large, what happened here? Why are there so many IPDs? Why weren't they remedied or rectified at the site level? The interval in between site monitoring, whether it's a remote structure or an on-site structure, that interval is, in my opinion, becoming stretched to save dollars. What I'm trying to say here is data is the almighty driver here. And without good data, and good quality, things are going to suffer. Things are going to suffer. So going back to the original point of this discussion is, yes, companies want to bring in their own resources to have this quality control, I wanted to say, not to micromanage, no, but to have the quality control to actually vet the CRA. Flying to a site, jumping through the hoop, running through the motions is one different. Clicking a bunch of boxes and leaving, that's not monitoring.
Do you know what slowly, and this has been my theory since eSource, eReg, all this direct to, like all this site centric stuff, I love it as a site owner. Like we get really cool tech at like free or very low prices. Our own service included, the one with me and Chris. But they range from free to cost some money. Not only do they help sites, like not only is this the golden era for site centricity, I think it's still the beginning of the golden era. But what that is actually doing, I mean, if you connect the dots, it's empowering the sponsors to have more control, like you said. Like what used to be the realm of CRO, hey, we're flying blind, we're the sponsor, we're flying blind, we're doing an arthritis trial. I don't know where to start. We're hiring you not just to monitor, but to like we need help finding these sites. Well, now you have companies like me and Chris's company, you have companies like Nato, you have other companies like Zena's doing with Yendu, where they are like giving this power not just to the sites, they're giving the power to the sponsors to go directly to the source. And then this you can take this paradigm across all the verticals in our space. And over time, technology is crushing the middleman. And in this case, the middleman is the CRO for the most part. And I think that's a good thing. I think people who are depending on CROs for their careers may suffer, like Callan was saying, overhired. Maybe this is the new norm. It's like they're not going to overhire. Maybe now it's shifting to the sponsors and the site networks.
So, I'm going to give a shout out to somebody you used to watch and I still watch occasionally.
Who?
The Johnny Bravo channel.
Oh yeah, he's the fear monger.
Yeah, every video is
Doom and
more
gloom.
catastrophe than the next. But
I thought
anyhow,
the world was over like 3 years ago, but it's still going on.
so in about 2022, now again, he everything's negative almost on his channel, so you have to keep this in mind. But he said at the time that there was so much stimulus, and he had charts to show this, right? There was so much stimulus given out by the government that companies had a surplus of funds, right? And he said, so long as that surplus remains, there will be no layoffs. There will be no job losses, right? And companies are holding on to their employees because they don't want to have to train them. They want to see what it develops. They don't know if there's going to be the need. So they're just hanging on to these people, right? And about 6 months ago, he said the funds are now gone. There should be layoffs coming, right? So I don't know if that's part of it as well. That could be more of the macro in terms of just all markets, right? In terms of layoffs that are coming or have come. I don't know. Just saying.
Yeah. But the biotechs always live in the future. They're the first ones to suffer. And then in like before a bear market, and they're the first ones to pop, like when a bull market's about to hit. Like the biotechs are like the predictors of what's going to happen to the rest. Just because there's such high risk, so volatile. So I think we're seeing, and I'm an optimist. We're kind of in the worst of it right now. I think this patent cliff is gonna expedite things. I'm not sure I can say the same for the CROs. I think we're all in agreement. Well, maybe not, but the CROs, I think we've reached peak CRO ever.
Wait. Valuations maybe, but back when I started in the industry, every study had a CRO, right? Then about 6 years ago, maybe more, maybe 8, 9 years ago, it was more so sponsors were handling everything on their own.
Yeah.
And now it seems to have rolled back to more CRO usage. So
I predict we've reached peak CRO. I'm not saying they're going away, but why are they buying sites? Why are they buying all this tech? It's because they need to stay relevant and they need to adapt.
Well, doesn't having a site network as a CRO accelerate your site acquisition for studies, right? When a sponsor awards you a study, here we got 40 sites already lined up that can do this study.
But that's assuming they're going to be well run.
Sure.
And sites is a different business than a CRO. And how many PIs want to work for CROs? It remains to be seen. I mean, the site networks are here to stay. Do their operations change when CROs buy them? or private equities buy them, or IRBs buy them who are private equity. IRBs are private equity companies, guys. Like, I can't get that through past my head. Anyways, seems like sponsor CROs who have the resources can spend more time focusing on diversity in their trials. Do you think with budgetary contractions, there's less focus on recruiting for diversity and inclusion? This is a loaded one, LinkedIn user.
No, the answer is no, because the
Yeah,
FDA's mandated
exactly.
requirement.
Exactly.
They
Yeah.
have to meet them.
Well,
I don't think the FDA is enforcing that just yet, but it's coming. Right?
yeah, I would agree, Chris, but let me add a little bit more context to in terms of my opinion. So, the FDA has draft guidance out there, as everybody's aware. This draft guidance was issued in 2022, and they use some very loose language in the draft guidance that we have.
As they do with
And
everything.
and it says to implement this as soon as reasonably possible.
Right. So
Right.
they're not mandating it.
But everybody knows, like you said, it's coming. And, and everybody, look, if you have a new compound in terms of even submission of an IND out of the clinic, and especially if you're going for an NDA submission, if you did not meet the guidelines specified within the draft guidance documents, what do you plan to do in phase 4, post-market surveillance studies, to ensure the DEI requirements have been met? So it's going to come around one way or another, whether you address it at the IND phase, DA phase, phase 2, phase 3, phase 1, whatever, or even phase 4, post-market surveillance during commercialization, it's going to be a requirement. So quite honestly, I agree with you, Chris. The high-level answer to this question is absolutely not.
I would agree with that too. One of the reasons why we're running LICR with the Ashley, Monica, Judy, and them. And
I just want to say one thing. Big shout out to Dan. Hanging out at the Yuma JazzFest, community engagement. I mean, talking to people, just, hey, I mean, that's what it's all about. Dan, seriously, you got to give yourself a pat on the back for that. That was amazing. Dan and I were chatting, and he was at the Yuma JazzFest, just hanging out.
It was our CRC, Lana Stevens. It's just,
well,
I get to do the touchdown celebrations, but Lana's like, her mom owns the restaurant right in front of where it's at. And she's like, why don't we just go every Thursday night? I'm like, all right, do that. And you get Monday off. And then we'll alternate. And dude, they got like 10 leads the first day we went. So this Thursday, in 2 days, we're going again. And yeah, I mean, it's community, it's grassroots. Like, back to your thing on budgets at SOS. Like, how do you even budget for that? Like, why even budget for that? At what point is it just cost of doing business as a site to do good shit in your community?
Right.
And it's going to help everyone in the long run, including yourself, including DE&I. But thank you for that.
No, absolutely.
Lana Stevens, I know you're not on LinkedIn, but I'll send you this clip. We got a good one here. Kellen is active. Okay. I'm also wondering how well AI integration is going to begin to work against CRAs. Kel, nobody wants to touch these questions at other organizations. We're not an organization, in case you guys can't tell.
We'll touch them. Don't worry.
We come in blasting Tupac. It can help spot CDA findings and work coordinators through resolving queries without the use of a CRA coming in that may actually not know how to do this stuff. Robert?
Yeah, let me tackle this one. So for the audience that may be wondering what CDA is a central data analyst. Kellen, if I'm incorrect, please let me know your interpretation. But let the audience rest assured on something. What AI cannot do, it's just like creating any type of a risk log, right? We always ask ourselves, okay, what can be detected centrally, remotely, but what can be only detected when you're on site? Let's just start with IP, for example. Is AI going to be able to reconcile IP? And I don't care if it's an infusion, a vial, or pills, or an injection. The answer to that question is no. So, are there going to be AI tools that are out there looking for PDs and discrepancies and comparing medical history to ConMeds to AEs and, edit checks that are more contemporaneously noted? Absolutely. Is AI going to help with that? Absolutely. Are the remote findings going to be made more, aware to you as a CRO stakeholder sooner and a sponsor sooner? Absolutely. Will sponsors likely adopt this tech to kind of surveil their investment? Probably. But that doesn't mean, the CRAs are going away. I think CRAs are going to remain a critical component to the boots on the ground, the eyes and the ears, the extension of the sponsor, whether you're working directly for a sponsor or you're working for a CRO. So don't worry about that, in my opinion, because there's just certain things that AI cannot do. Who's going to reconcile the investigator site file against the TMF? Is AI going to comb through some papers and know when? Yeah, I mean, yeah,
And
AI
who's going to
can
follow
look.
up with the sites when things are missing, which, by
Right,
the way, are all the time. Like
exactly.
AI, can you imagine AI bugging you over and over again for something? Like, you're just going to turn it off. It's not a person. First of all, sites are good at ignoring humans. They're going to not blink an eye to ignore AI.
Exactly, and like Cassim just mentioned on the most recent comment, Dan. Um, I completely agree. You still have to have human oversight of the AI machine itself, whether that's a CRA, a CDA, a CMA, an in-house CRA, clinical lead, whoever. Somebody has to oversee this and triage. Is this an actual problem, and what do I do with this problem? You know, yet to be seen. But I think in the short term, don't worry. I think CRAs are going to be safe.
I agree. Chris, what are your thoughts on this? You have a lot of thoughts on AI.
Well, I was gone during the whole conversation, but
Will AI replace CRAs in the time being?
um, in the time being, no. Eventually, sure. I think
I
AI
agree.
eventually could replace anything.
Could replace this podcast. Like, you probably do a better job running this live than we did.
I mean, eventually we'll be in a sci-fi movie, but for the
Yeah.
meantime, that's not happening.
I think for the foreseeable future, and especially when research is such a laggard as far as adopting anything, you'll start seeing other industries getting radically disrupted before we see research getting disrupted. Like,
What?
you have the advantage in being in such a slow industry, like all the stuff we complain about. You have that advantage. You can see where the puck is going, like Wayne Gretzky said, as
That
far
part
as AI replacing other jobs.
that part may or may not be true. I agree, absolutely. Things move very slowly in research, right? Look at DCT. Um,
Yeah, sites still use paper, but there's
right.
good arguments for that, by the way. Nice wig too, SOS.
Yeah. Thanks. I'll never live that one down. But think about it. If you could develop a system in which, so employing humans, you're at best getting 12 hours a day out of them, right? If you could employ a system that's 24/7 nonstop and does everything correctly, it wouldn't take long to adopt that system, right? It would be maybe a year, I would think. You would just see that it works elsewhere, I would think, in research and employ it. It's just nowhere near that. I mean, we have a colleague, Dan, that uses AI to, well, ChatGPT to write things.
You should
And
use Grok.
okay,
I
whatever. But
told them already. I know who it is.
yeah, but the point is it doesn't do it correctly,
No.
right?
No.
You still have to supervise it.
Yes.
So the same thing would be required of AE in the industry and in the industry at this point. It's just not efficient enough.
They don't
I
think
mean,
like humans yet. Like when I was messing around one trying to design a logo, and I would say, okay, this is cool. Like, it took like 20 minutes. Hey, this is all cool, but just change this. I said, just change this little thing. A human would have understood this thing, no matter the prompt, just gave me a different logo every single time. It doesn't think like we do in like iterations and layers. It thinks like
mhm.
just algorithm. And I'm sure if I asked it again, it would give me something completely different. So it's not good yet at the nuances, which a lot of the CRA CRC interactions are like nuanced. Like, hey, where is this pill from this bottle? Is it in this other bottle? Because this other bottle had one more pill than I would expect. I don't think AI is doing that yet. I think AI would just throw out a bunch of nonsense in that scenario, and coordinator would just ignore it.
It's coming though. Yeah, I
It's
completely
coming. It's
agree.
coming.
We're not there yet, anywhere near it. But 10 years, maybe.
Well, Kellen, if it can reduce the need for numbers of full-time employees working on a study, I'd wonder how the entry level or lower level candidates will find a foothold when the desire will then just be for senior and above. I have thoughts on this.
See, I agree
actually
with
think
I agree with that, just not now. I think they will slowly replace. They won't hire anybody, and the experienced staff will supervise the AI, and then eventually they'll be replaced too.
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
go ahead, Robert.
no, go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
I was
But I
gonna
think
say,
that's 10 years off, at least 10 years.
yeah, I mean, if you compare it to like fast food, like McDonald's is already reducing their entry level. They have everything
Yeah,
automated.
less thought required there, though, right?
Right. I actually think in research and in healthcare in general, who's going to be like eliminated first are the higher cost workers. I think the lower cost workers, Dr. Smith, who's our PI, we all met him here at Yuma Clinical Trials. I was talking to him about AI about 6 months ago, maybe a little longer. I said, hey, he's not a no bullshit guy. So I brought it up to him. I said, you think that's going to affect like your clinic? He's ready to retire. And he said, you know what? In 10 years, there won't be doctors in here. There's going to be MAs, all the MAs here, maybe more, with an iPad running around to patients. They'll be better at diagnosing, less errors. They're not going to have attitudes. The lower level employees are actually in our industry, I believe, the safest. Coordinators, safest. The jobs that require the human touch, like, hey, let's get that patient in. Patient doesn't feel like waking up today for this depression study. And AI is not going to be able to say, "Hey, come in, please. You need to do your visit." It needs a human being to say, "Hey, what's going on? What's the issue? Look, can you come in? Like, I'll buy you a sandwich. I'll go
So,
do something. Like, you can bring your kids. We'll watch them."
without a doubt, that's apples to
Lower,
oranges.
yes,
Apples to oranges for his question, though. He's speaking at the sponsor and I assume CRO levels, right?
yeah, but those I don't see that as lower level candidates or entry level. I see sites as where the entry level candidates are at.
Don't disagree with that. You still are going to require human touch, humans to interact with humans until you develop AI robots that look like humans, act like humans,
And can
right?
empathize like humans.
Exactly. That's 50, 100 years off,
Well,
I think.
well, maybe sooner than that, but we'll all be
Well, once we get
retired.
there, we're at Terminator stage.
I
So
was just thinking, oh my, Chris, I was literally thinking Terminator. I was literally just thinking Terminator 2. I mean, that's Cyberdyne Systems. I mean, yeah, you guys are not wrong. You're absolutely right. However, I still have to say that as we grow new PIs into the industry, and Dr. Smith is absolutely correct. There's already clinics popping up, at least in the suburbs of Phoenix, Scottsdale, and things like that, Dan, Chris, where you walk into this body scanner and it literally has an algorithmic prediction of what your likelihood in terms of percentages. Dana White from UFC even talked about this. He's like, if the doctor's like, if you don't do A, B, and C, you're gonna die by 72. I mean, like
yeah,
there's a crazy amount of different things, and my personal primary care physician, I just saw him a little bit ago. He's like, Robert, do you think you're gonna find another doctor who's gonna sit around and talk to you for 20 to 30 minutes the way that I do? He's like, well, the minute I retire, good luck. And he's 100% correct. The
wait.
extenders are going to be, go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just going to say what you were just describing. I actually have an appointment to do on March 3rd.
There you go.
I'm going to go sit on a table for an hour, and it's going to run radiation through me and tell me everything I'm doing right and wrong, and tell me how to improve my longevity. They say supposedly add 5 to 10 years to your life. So it's going to tell me
what I'm talking about.
What I don't have and what I need, right?
And,
what I'm doing correctly.
And Chris, is that table machine that you're going to be laying on going to be more accurate than a physician giving you a physical exam?
Yes, absolutely.
For sure.
There you go. Because what ends up happening, physicians can't make decisions without laboratory testing, imaging. They're always referring you out. Oh, go to a cardiologist, go to endocrinologist, go to dermatologist. Like by the end of the so from a patient perspective, maybe quality of care will get better because quality of care, in my opinion, has gone down because the volume of patients that have to be seen by the providers to make ends meet comparatively speaking to 20 years ago, is probably 5 to 10x. Back in the day, a patient, an internal medicine family doctor could see 30, 40, 50 patients a day. Now they're seeing 100 to 125 a day to get the same reimbursements that they had 15, 20 years ago.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Forcing
what
them
happened?
to
Yeah,
herd
I
and
mean,
cattle patients. Like Dr. Joe said it in a pod. Patients are like cattle now, and the doctors are like the dogs herding the cattle,
yeah,
and the ranch owner, the farmer, are the health systems.
it's really a shame. It's really a shame. So that's why we have to, that's why the breakthroughs in research is critical to the future of medicine and understanding what options patients have, what's in their best interest. I mean, and Chris, I can probably, I'm just going to go out on a whim. Is that exam you're having on that table covered by your insurance? Probably not.
No, I have to pick
There you
that.
go. That's my point. So not
It's
everybody is fortunate enough to have access to something like that,
right.
you
Right.
know? And so, if that's the new gold standard to increase longevity and it's really positioned for those who can have access to it, whether it's a
Yeah.
socioeconomic reason or whether it's a, personal reason, um, then great. Everybody should be able to do that because you're absolutely right. But that's the future. And Dr. Smith, coming back to what he said, Dan, your PI, I couldn't agree more with him. It's going to be that because right now medicine is seriously protocol algorithmic checklists. Even
Hmm.
if you can treat a patient with step C, you have to go through A and B first. How many times has a treating physician had to do an X-ray or an MRI, then a CT? The X-ray has to be done. Why can't you just go to a CT if you need a CT? No, but I got to put the patient through the ringer in order to get to where I have to be.
Because
Big
everyone's got
problem.
their hand out along the way.
Everyone's got their hand out, and medicine is controlled by business
Hmm.
with dollar signs over patients' heads. And the humanity might, again, this is my opinion. Please let me just preface in saying that this is totally my opinion, but this is what I see. And I'm sure, look, at the end of the day, Dan, all of us, we're all patients. We're all patients. At one point in our life, we will be or are currently a patient. So, how do you feel about it? Let's discuss. And if you ever want to join us on one of these discussion panels, Dan's always happy to bring people on ad hoc. We can send you
Yeah.
the link, send them a DM on LinkedIn and jump into this conversation
Let's do
because
it.
it takes an advocate, it takes a community voice, and that's why SOS was such a success. It
Man.
broke the it broke the status quo of what conferences are. We had constructive, solution-oriented discussions. It wasn't just me or anybody trying to sell you something. It was actual like, hey, here's a problem, here's a potential solution. People walked away with valuable insight, and they're still talking about it 2.5 weeks later.
Certainly.
Robert's the
And
best guest of all time. I
and
mean,
in
he does
regard
like the ads for us. This is
and,
amazing.
and in regards to that SOS, are you going to be in Oklahoma City if it's there? And are you going to drink as much next time?
Who are you asking, Robert?
First
I'm
of all,
asking
Chris,
Robert.
I didn't really drink that much. Let's just say that. And
Okay.
of course I'm gonna be in Oklahoma. I don't care if it's in Alaska. It can be in Siberia.
All right. That's what I
Oh,
want to
we'll
hear.
bring that
Um,
up in our meeting tomorrow.
Well,
yeah,
so I beg to slightly differ. Well, I don't drink a lot, and I drink more than enough for both of us.
yes, indeed. But listen, everybody likes to indulge in these conferences and get a little, but I think it was a great, it was great. And if you weren't at SOS, the inaugural SOS, I'm just telling you as an outsider, you should definitely consider coming to the next one,
Oh,
regardless of destination. It's
absolutely.
not to mention you get to hang out with Chris and Dan.
There's so
That's
many people that did not come. I'm like, what the heck, man, or woman, But they all have their reasons. I get it, and like a lot of people don't trust the first anything, right? Like, okay, catch me on the second one, like when I know
right.
it's good. So
Yep.
we'll have a lot of that. But speaking of this, though, like just to come full circle and wrap this up. So Asrat, congrats. We're talking about job market suffering. He's waiting currently for it to be interviewed in a few minutes for a TCRC. So it's probably a coordinator or something.
That's awesome.
at SOS, in my breakout session, I decided to bring all my staff, all Yuma clinical trials, because it was about staffing and recruiting. So me, Jaime, and all the girls were there. Pretty decent turnout. At the end, we're done. I start talking to people. It's on the vlog. The vlog's almost done, by the way. You want to talk about job market suffering? Recruiters, multiple recruiters, and site network owners. So I'm still gonna find out who you are. Approached my coordinators, like in front of my eyes. I mean, I'm distracted with a conversation with someone here. They're over there talking. They're telling me, "Hey, these people are trying to recruit us." Man, like, where? These guys, all of them said, "I got job
Man.
offer." They all said they're happy. I said, "Next time we're giving you a whistle. You blow it when the recruiter approaches. Stranger danger. Blow it hard." But it tells you a little bit about this is a tale of two markets. It's the sites hot as hell. Sponsor Zero. I don't know. I'm hearing not so much. Right? Like
Definitely cooling off. Yeah, that's crazy, man. I can't believe people try to poach your staff, Dan. That's. But
it's
look,
the game though. It's
I want to say like a shout out to like James Fowle, right, from Huxley Morton.
yeah,
You
he
know,
should have came, man. Next time he come.
yeah, he's got to come. But like he always posts, he's like he got a call from a CEO, and the CEO said, "Don't you dare, poach any of my staff." That's part of the game. If your staff is happy, you're
Exactly.
good.
Dude, my staff
You're
texted
good.
me on the spot, like, "Hey, you better come over here."
This
You know,
guy's trying to take me.
but I already told them I'm happy, like where I'm at. And they know the grass is always greener, but sometimes they don't.
Man,
Astrat says travel CRC with care access. Good luck. Lots of travel for a 1-day conference. Yeah, I know. 2-day would be better next time and probably doable if you have sessions to present solutions to issues. Yes, we all agree 1 day
yeah,
was,
it was a
we just
lot.
wanted a guaranteed win. And 1 day is a lot easier to plan for than 2 days. And we didn't know we are going to have conference planners. We thought we were going to do this thing all ourselves.
And we
At the
didn't know it was
end,
going to be this successful either.
this successful. In hindsight, we should have done more days, but we thought from day one we'd be doing it all ourselves, like project managing. I was ordering jalapeno poppers, guys. Like that, we literally were doing a lot. Yeah, I ordered all the food at Gentle Ben's, like at the after party.
That's amazing.
But next time we know for sure that James and Lucy, yep, Kelvin people were, man. It's on vlog. Everything lives on in history. We will find out who those people were, but it's all good if you did. You learned the hard way. Not gonna be our staff, or maybe it will
Yep.
be. Good luck.
Next time, keep your staff happy so you don't have to look for staff.
That's
I mean,
right.
it's that like do what Dan does. It's really a simple.
Give them a whistle.
Yeah, give them a whistle. Dan, maybe we should come out with whistles and put it on your merch store and just like
Next conference we're doing Yuma clinical whistles for
whistles,
our staff.
yeah. And I'm not talking like the lifeguard whistle. We have to make like a high pitched like
safety one.
Yeah, like a safety whistle. I mean, it's gonna or just hand out air horns. How many times do we hear the air horns go off? I mean, that'd be hilarious.
This is a poaching free zone. If you're a coordinator, you wear this whistle, and when someone approaches, you just blow into it. Your site director should come running.
Oh man,
would love to make the second one. Kellen, please do. Please do. You would love it. You would do amazing. It's for frontline workers, man. It's not for executives like Scope, where it's the same. And I'm not just isolating any. They're all like this, where just the same people go talk about the same thing. You know what they do? They talk about the coordinators. They talk about the CRAs. What we do is talk with them. They're there. Like, why are you talking about them? They're right here. It's rude. Don't talk about someone if they're right there.
And
At
we
these
try to offer
conferences,
solutions.
yeah, these people don't even get invited. So that's why we did this. I think we're here for a while. Cat-like whistle with a sound only CRCs can hear. What would that sound be? I don't know. It definitely can't be the voice of a CRA. They tune that out.
It's good stuff.
This was fun, guys. Anything like you did not, you feel like you need to get off your chest or state? We could do more of these.
Yeah, no, I just, I want to tell everybody out there listening, if you're in the market and you're having a tough time and you're looking at the CRO sponsor level, hang in there, shoot me a message, let's connect, let's talk about it. And I agree with Dan also that I think this is the worst of it right now. It can only go up from here. Um, Hopefully March, April, things will open up. Maybe the Fed will cut the interest rates a little bit, and just everybody hang on, hang on. Don't give up and keep going, keep pushing forward, and lots of resources out there in the community that are always available, listening ears. I'm definitely one of them. So we're all in this together, and time will tell how this story ends.
So you two are more knowledgeable in this space than I am, not research, but another space, and probably not entirely knowledgeable either. But has VC, because you kind of touched on it, VC money, has that dried up entirely all industries, or is it just like in terms of pharmaceuticals?
They're going for practical stuff. They're not going for high growth, high risk, high growth anymore. They're going for tried and true in industries that are inefficient, that could be vertically integrated, like, oh, I don't know, clinical research. Like this, so that's why they're going for the sites. They're no longer investing in like the next tech thing, like the Uber for walking dogs at a 100x multiple. They're going after research sites at a 3 to 5x EBITDA.
And are showing probably some sort of revenue as well, right?
Oh, you have to show revenue, yeah, not just revenue, profit. Like you have to show an EBITDA.
Right.
Go figure. Like these tech companies don't know what that even means, and then they package these sites up together, flip them to either a CRO or a private equity or a health system. That's the game right now. I don't know how long that lasts. I think it's a 2 to 5 year window. I predict it doesn't end well. Like SMO, this reminds me a lot of the SMO from the late 90s.
Absolute tangent to that last question I had, but do you think, and this has nothing to do with research, but do you think that would be a good metric for whether or not the economy is doing well or poorly if VC money entirely dries up?
If VC money entirely dries up,
would that mean we're in for some hard times economically, you think?
Well, VC money is going to be on the sideline, doesn't dry up. It's just not being deployed.
Exactly. That's my point, though.
That's what he means, I think. Yeah.
That's exactly what I mean.
That means
there's
that
no investing in the economy. There's no buying. There's no anything, right, from VCs.
Yeah, I mean, well, that we saw that even, the money, it's currently still on the sidelines.
Yeah.
They have
in
billions.
Research, though,
yes.
right?
Yeah, but I think, in research.
I'm saying entirely,
right.
economically entirely.
I think research is like where it's still pockets of activity. I think most other industries that's gone away, unless it's AI or something like hot that's worth the high risk reward. But the next Uber for whatever that's gone. That kind of stuff's gone. In research, you do have things that like sites, some site-centric tech that are still getting funding. DCT, that's drying up, I think. But yeah. And Kelvin, so CROs are buying sites or site network? Kelvin, what? Yes, man. IQVIA just paid like $500 million. IQVIA just paid $500 million for like 30 sites. That's crazy.
Yeah, and they're actually here out of Arizona. What is it? Cognitive Clinical Trials is the name. Yeah, that's it. That's the one.
Like $500 million, right? Or like 300 million.
I don't know. I don't know if they disclose the actual number, Dan, but yeah, they just purchased that. And if you go to Cognitive Clinical Trials website, you'll see it's an IQVIA company.
Yeah.
So,
yes, and that's
just one example.
Point. CROs have to do something. They realize the market's changing, and I think IQVIA is the one that's safest. But the CROs have to scramble, like either through tech. They have to differentiate themselves somehow. It's not just about monitoring and feasibility and all this stuff. That's going to become commoditized. Monitoring and startup and all that's going to be a commodity soon. Like, what's your product differentiation?
Yep.
We go on for another hour about this, but we could save it for another one.
Yep, it's been good. It's been fun as always. All the engaging questions. Thank you to everybody. Dan, thanks for having me again as always.
Thank you guys, man. Thank you guys both. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Go follow Robert right now. And then Chris, do you even have a LinkedIn, or like what's
I do.
what's the call to action?
I haven't looked at it in probably 6 or 7 years.
You can email Chris at theclinicaltrialsguru.com.
Hey man, what are you doing that for?
You don't like that? Never mind, guys.
Or just reach out to me and I'll give you Chris's cell phone number. You can text
Don't
him.
do that either.
Okay, guys.
I would never. All right, guys.
Comment, share. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Robert and Chris. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.